Welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. I'm joined today by my special guest and colleague, Cliff Kincaid.
Great to be with you, Don.
It's good to see you. I'm glad you got a chance to visit the office finally. All right, well, let's go ahead and let's talk about the election. I've been doing this a lot during this past week with various other people, but I do want to get your opinion about how things have gone. So give me first your overview, your feeling about how the election turned out.
Well, let me just make the point that it may be my first visit to this office.
Okay, all right, clarification.
But I've been associated with AIM for quite a long time.
All right.
Ever since I graduated from college back in 1978 and came to Washington, D.C. through Stan Evans' journalism program, then became an intern at Accuracy in Media, got hired by your dad. So I've been here longer than you have.
That's in a lot of ways, yes.
in the way that matters, years. Compare pictures of me now with those way back when. So, and I think AIM has really had a major impact on what has been happening politically because as we've seen, and I'll get to your question, the latest Gallup poll earlier this year found that trust in the media is at an all-time low.
Right, exactly.
And that was why AIM was started in 1968 by your father and my mentor and friend Reed Irvine, because he saw that the media had this credibility, but they didn't deserve it because they were so biased. And over the years, of course, other groups have come along challenging the media, but it was AIM that initially raised the question, raised the red flag, you can't trust these people. They have a liberal bias. And I think not only did we see the people this year in the Gallup poll say we don't trust these people, we saw them really vote their distrust in the media when they voted for Donald J. Trump. And we had polls over the last couple months which showed that the majority of the American people believed there was a liberal bias and that it was biased against Donald J. Trump. So people are seeing through the bias. And the question then becomes, are the media ever going to change? Are they? They keep this pretense that they have credibility and they're objective, and I can go through the whole history of it, including when I went to college and took journalism, that they haven't taught objective news reporting for decades. My college textbook was called interpretative reporting.
Oh.
And it was by Curtis McDougal, who was a member of the Progressive Party then. The old Henry Wallace-run Progressive Party, and now it's
who my father supported.
Well, your father had a conversion.
That's
didn't
exactly
he?
right.
That's an interesting story too. So, what we've seen is really amazing that the media keep talking among themselves and really telling people what to think. And in the words of Donald Trump, the media have been told by the electorate, "You're fired. We don't trust you anymore." And the question becomes, will they ever change?
Right. No, exactly. All right. So election analysis from your point of view.
I think what happened was that the Democrats lost the white vote, specifically the white working class. They didn't see this coming. And that's because the media don't get out of their studios. Their, quote, experts don't get out of the ivory towers like Larry Sabatos. Maybe we can
We're going to talk about that.
Talk about his crystal ball predicting Hillary would win with 322 electoral votes. It didn't seem to work out very well for him, but he's going to stay in business,
Sure.
Getting taxpayer money. So they didn't see it coming. Now, to pat myself on the back, I know I didn't write this particular part of it down, but you can ask my youngest son, Christian, or my wife. I predicted a Trump win. I predicted Trump would win with over 300 electoral votes. And it looks like he may get, I think, 306 at this.
That's what they're looking at because of Michigan.
Now, why? Why did that happen? Well, one thing I learned from your father, and I've learned through the years, I have a journalism degree, is you got to get out and talk to people. And when I would get out and talk to people where I live in southern Maryland or in some of the visits I took to other states, especially Pennsylvania, what did I see? I saw all these Trump signs, hundreds of them, and very few Hillary or Clinton Kane signs. And I started looking into this, and I had my doubts, as I wrote about in my columns for AIM, about Trump and some of his views and his Russia connection, but I saw he was touching a nerve. And another thing I did in looking for information, I went to a very interesting website called Right Side Broadcasting. And it's relatively new. You know, it's much different than CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News. What they did was they went to the Trump rallies themselves and they filmed the whole thing. And they showed people, the viewers, how many were actually showing up for the Trump rallies in these airport hangars. 20, 30,000 people. You know, Trump would always challenge the media. No, don't just show me and the people behind me, survey the crowd. Let the people out there see how many are here. And sure enough, I said, this fellow, this candidate, Trump, is touching a nerve. And why is it? And so I investigated more. A friend of mine called J.B. Williams wrote this book, or co-wrote it, called Trumped, The New American Revolution. And he, too, he was getting out there talking to people. He said, Cliff, there's a groundswell out there for Trump. And by contrast, Hillary was not getting very many people to her rallies. The real turnout came near the end when she'd get the celebrities like Jay-Z or Beyonce
Bon
or
Jovi, all these people.
LeBron James,
that's right.
Springsteen.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden she'd get some big crowds, and then they dissipate when the celebrities were done.
Exactly.
The entertainment was. So I saw it coming, and I saw, even at one point in the campaign, I noticed that Michael Moore, the leftist filmmaker, was warning the Democrats. He said, Trump is striking a nerve in the Rust Belt, and he may pull it off. Now, at the end, Michael Moore became a good Democrat, fell in line behind Hillary Clinton, and screened his film, what is it, Michael Moore in Trump Land, or some name like that. Yeah. He screened it up in of all places, his home state of Michigan. But that was another thing that told me that Trump was going to win, because all of a sudden the Democrats near the end of the campaign were back in Michigan. I thought that was supposed to be in their back pocket.
Right.
I mean, another Rust Belt state. Now, let me give you one more example, and this gets back to Ohio. I spent a lot of my growing up years in Ohio, graduated with my journalism degree from Toledo, Ohio, University of Toledo. I watched one of these Trump rallies in Toledo. Now, and it was on Right Side Broadcasting. And I thought, Toledo? Trump's in Toledo? This is one of the most heavily Democratic cities in Ohio, Northwest Ohio. And I saw the tens of thousands of people there. And then, of course, I've been in contact with my friends back in Toledo, and they've told me what's happened to Toledo. It used to be, and it still is, technically the glass capital of the world, because it supplies a lot of glass for the cars in Detroit, 60 miles away. But my friends were telling me, look into the situation here in Toledo. You know, I only got back occasionally, I think for my 40th high school reunion, but I keep in touch with my friends, and they said, the city's devastated, and the only investment we have in Toledo these days is from the Chinese. The Chinese. The Rust Belt is dependent on the Chinese to throw a few bucks their way. And one of the most amazing stories I heard was that the Toledo Museum of Art was in the process of expanding and needed some glass for the expansion wing. And this is the glass capital of the world. They had to go to China for glass. And so that gave me a better understanding of why so many of the working class, the blue-collar voters, were just sick of the Democrats, who had turned their back on them because they were appealing to the transgenders and the Muslims, but they had lost touch with the working class. And that's why I think Trump won.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. The media, to me, I mean, they really blew it by not being out there really and covering what was going on there. I mean, they kept blowing off all these big numbers that Trump was running up in terms of these rallies, and people thought, okay, well, this is a celebrity and all this of Trump. People want to get near him and whatnot. You know, that continued. That was from the start all the way to the end. You know, he goes into, like you said, he goes into Michigan, he goes into Pennsylvania, forces the Democrats to go into those states they should have held, you know, and then they've had for the last, 20, 25 years, in terms of presidential politics, and really just change things. And to see the media just kind of wringing their hands after all of this is like, how did we blow this? How did we miss this? Well, it was right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, all I have to do is go out and talk to these people. And you can see by the poll results. In terms of how the voting pattern did. Plus, and he picked up 29% of the Hispanic vote. Everybody said, "Oh, he's going to kill the Hispanic vote," and look what happened there. So just all these different factors. I mean, and you wrote about the blue collar vote as well.
And I wrote about this. I saw it coming. You know, it's interesting to see what's been happening after the election. The media don't seem to get it. They're bringing on some Democrats. Well, what happened? Well, I found it interesting. I got the quote here from Ohio Democrat Congressman Tim Ryan, who's challenging Nancy Pelosi to be the Democratic leader in the House. And this is his quote. Under our current leadership, Democrats have been reduced to our smallest congressional minority since 1929. This should indicate to all of us that keeping our leadership team completely unchanged will simply lead to more disappointment. We've lost over 60 seats since 2010. We have the fewest Democrats in state and federal offices since Reconstruction. But then here's the best quote of all. He says, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and keep getting the same results. Now, he's commenting on the Democrats.
Right.
But that applies to the media. And the media have no credibility with the people, even less now, since they've been humiliated on November 8th, but they'll keep doing the same thing over and over and over again because they're isolated from the American people. They'll keep bringing on the same faces, same, quote, experts over and over. They don't realize they're digging their own grave.
Right. All right. Now, you mentioned this just briefly before, and let's talk about this, and let's talk about Mr. Sabato and his crystal ball. Fill me in.
Well, Larry Sabato is really a media star. He's a professor at the University of Virginia, and he runs a Center for Politics down at UVA. And he's got a staff. I don't know how much money they're bringing in, but they have claimed, at least before this election, to be really accurate and authoritative. Well, as I went back and looked at the media coverage of the election, I found that he had been on MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell show on November 7th with his final predictions. And he predicted Hillary would win with 332, and Trump would only get 216. And not only that, I can go through the quotes. He basically said, Hillary's so strong, she might even win Ohio. Well, she lost it by about 9 points. I mean, he was wrong on so many things. Senate races, the overall presidential race. And of course, on MSNBC, the people who were there along with Sabato on this particular show were, of course, they breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, that horrible guy Trump isn't going to win. We've dodged a bullet. And Anna Marie Cox of MTV was on and said, well, just because we won the presidential race, again, this is before the results, we still got to find out what happened with Trump and how we led to these horrible things happening among the elect. Well, needless to say, they've got egg all over their face. Sabato, but again, Sabato, my prediction, my crystal ball prediction, and that's what he calls his newsletter.
Yeah.
The crystal ball.
It got a little cloudy.
Or broken.
Or broken.
like a reporter for the Richmond Times-Dispatch said the only glass that was broken was his crystal ball, not Hillary's glass ceiling. and so, but what happened? Sabato, yeah, they put a mea culpa on their websites, and boy, we got this one wrong. We'll try to never let this happen again. Well, my suggestion is, close up that thing, get out of the prediction business, or else go into astrology. But maybe, Larry, you ought to go back just to teaching your students and stick to the facts and objective reality. But no, he was back on CNN on Monday talking about the election. He'll still be an expert.
Yeah.
Even though all these people totally blew it, like I say, they'll go back to the same people over and over and over again. And I think the American people are tired of it, and that's why you're going to see even more expansion of these alternative news and information sources, like the show we're doing right now with AIM. Yeah. People are not going to be going back to CNN or MSNBC or even, to some extent, Fox News, because they're seeing that they're getting the same old song and they want something new.
Right, and what I've seen myself is just when you talk about some of these other sources, is that I've talked to a lot of people who have, when that first brouhaha occurred between Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump back in the primary back last August, that as they started tuning out, they started going to One American News. So that is there. So these places are now benefiting by all of this. Now the networks didn't get hurt too much on this election cycle. There was so much interest, their ratings are up. But the thing is that what do you do now? Now that all that interest is going to fade to a certain degree, they're not going to have that same level of interest. What is MSNBC? There was a piece on Mediaite the other day where a guy was. He basically wrote a piece saying, to MSNBC, this is not the time to go middle of the road. You need to get your liberal, get all those liberal commentators and do that. Who wants to watch that?
No, they may be getting their ratings up during the campaign because people are interested. But as I put it in one of my columns, I think a lot of people who are watching are actually laughing. They're laughing at the media. And when they have alternatives, and it's getting easier and easier with smart TVs and the internet to find alternatives like One American News or this new venture that's coming down the pike in December, CRTV.
Right, yeah.
I mentioned Right Side Broadcasting as a source of, they're going to keep on the air just doing different things. It's relatively easy now to start your own TV channel with the technology that's available. Plus, the information's out there. Now, granted, it is easier just to turn on a TV and get some ordinary cable channel you're accustomed to. People have to break their habits and have to seek out the different alternative news and information sources. And I think that process is underway. Another thing that I think hurts the media, you mentioned Megyn Kelly, is she's just trying to make herself into the story. And apparently there's a new photo shoot out with her looking sexy.
Yeah.
What is this? How she's trying to sell the news, make it sexy? I think people want facts. I think people want reality. And until all the media, including Fox, start recognizing that they have to go out there in an old-fashioned way and dig up information, people will go elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I mean, Megyn Kelly has been a star for Fox, but you begin to wonder with all the things that have happened in the last year, they need her in a sense, and apparently there was those early reports that the other networks weren't as keen about signing her, and so Fox will probably re-sign her when her contract comes up. But yeah, all of these extra things, and then she her book is really about her, and it's not really about serious news. I mean, things have just changed. I mean, for that, and you begin to wonder. I mean, are we talking about news, or is she totally entertainment? It's all about her.
And now she's come out and said, "Oh, Roger Ailes sexually harassed me."
Right.
But several months ago, she was saying that he had helped her career.
Yeah.
So who do we believe? What do we believe?
Yeah. Which Megyn Kelly?
I think, I don't know if they're going to rehire her. There are reports that they've decided to give her a contract worth $20 million.
Yeah.
But that may be the result of the Murdoch brothers
Right.
Taking over because Ailes is out. And I question whether that would be a good rehire on their part. Maybe she'd be better doing a a TV talk show, a primetime show.
And I think that's what she wants.
Yeah, let her leave. Let's
Yeah.
let's get back. Even at Fox News, let's get back to the news. Now, look, I'm glad Fox is there. Fox News, including Fox Business, they've got some good anchors. Neil Cavuto and Lou Dobbs. He's one of my favorites. And of course Sean Hannity. Now, some of these guys do have opinions, and that's fine. But I think they do try to drive their shows with news, with interviews, and unlike Megyn Kelly, it's not all about them. They make good money and they have good shows, but with Megyn, it's like she's trying to be sexy to sell her show, and you know, I don't know if it's that convincing.
No, she's easy on the eyes.
Yeah, well, eye candy.
Eye candy. That's what works. It sells. I mean,
And it's entertainment. Yeah.
Right, and they know that. Let me ask you this quick question too. So there was Arthur Sulzberger, publisher of the New York Times, said that they promised the readers that they're going to cover Trump fairly and without bias. Do you buy that?
Well, I got that note too because I subscribe to the New York Times online, and Sulzberger, the publisher, and Dean Baquet, the executive editor, had sent out this letter. Basically, they were trying to explain why they got the election results so badly screwed up. And they said, we're rededicating ourselves to good journalism. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. You know, the only way to really change things in the major media, and I've said this repeatedly, I hate to go this far, but they really need an affirmative action program for conservative journalists. Maybe they don't want to call it that. And I'm saying let's get beyond just bringing some talking heads who are in favor of Trump, paid pundits. I'm talking about there are good conservative journalists out there coming through Ames journalism program, coming through the old program I went through, the National Journalism Center. There are young conservative journalists out there who should be hired, who are in touch with that part of the electorate. And that's what they need to do, not go for the sexy news or trying to reinforce their own biases. Reach out. They've basically, in covering this election, they've missed a good part of the American people. They're out of touch. And I think part of it is they go to the same parties among themselves. They rub elbows with each other. I've covered a number of these events in Washington and New York City, for example, put on by the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association.
One of our favorites.
And the major media put money into this group.
Big money.
And I see these events. I go cover them. They tried to throw me out of one, but you see all the major media stars there, including from Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and they just believe this. They assume that if you're a journalist, you accept the gay rights agenda, you want to see them succeed. They don't even see two sides to that story. And so they need to go beyond their limited rut that they're in. And expand and get new hires, new people in there. Otherwise, their readers and viewers are just going to continue to go zoop right down.
Right, and you probably recall, I mean, what my father did in the old days of when Kay Graham was around, Washington Post shareholders meetings. He would frequently ask her about, "Can you please tell me what conservatives are working at the newspaper?" For which she would never identify anybody. I think she kind of demurred kind of to, like, there are some, but she just would not identify them, in which we knew meant that you had virtually zero there. If you weren't willing to admit that you had some, you didn't have any.
And then look what's happening to the media already. You mentioned the New York Times. The New York Times would probably be out of business today were it not for the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim, who came in, one of the richest men in the world, if not the richest, basically bailed them out financially. And look at what happened to the Washington Post. The Grahams got out.
Yep.
They sold out to Jeff Bezos, the Amazon billionaire. And so he's keeping it afloat, even though he's undoubtedly losing money on the Washington Post. So maybe they figure it doesn't matter if they're fair and balanced because there's always somebody that's going to bail them out. You know, if it's not Bezos, if it's not Carlos Slim, maybe George Soros.
Well, Warren Buffett has already done that, and so has the guy up in Boston. Was it John Tudor Jones or something like that, or whatever?
So maybe this is what they're counting on, just the big liberal bucks to keep them in business, and they can keep doing the same thing over and over again, like Tim Ryan said, insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again.
That's right. Okay, let's talk briefly. We've got a few more minutes left here about the transition coverage that's been under attack, the transition of Trump's administration by the media. I mean, what's your take on this?
Well, you know, the media, I'll give them a little credit here. At first they were saying, oh, it's in chaos. Trump can't name anybody. They don't know who to name, what to do. And then some of the reporters, I saw this on one of the evening news broadcasts the other day, they actually went back to check some facts to see what some other administrations had done that had just been elected. Turns out that Trump's on the same track. He's not behind them. He's not on the fast track, so to speak. He's taken his time, and that there's nothing to be concerned about. Again, they looked for an opportunity to try to undermine Trump, even though they lost the election, and they're belatedly recognizing that, well, maybe it's not so chaotic, maybe they are on a special timetable of their own, and we've had a couple, I understand, appointments named today. So, you know, again, they're looking for anything to try to undermine Trump, just like the other night when he went out to the steak place with his family. You saw these crocodile tears from the media. Well, they didn't tell us.
Yeah.
They didn't tell. They're not being transparent. I think most people watching this are laughing.
Oh yeah,
They're saying
absolutely.
good. They're saying good for you, Donald. Do it again. And that brings me to something I'd like to bring up. When they get their press operation settled, make sure if and when they do White House press briefings, they don't restrict the White House press corps to the big liberal media. Let's start opening that up to the conservative bloggers, people at AIM,
Yeah, absolutely.
people at conservative organizations. How about giving James O'Keefe a White House press pass?
Oh,
You know what?
that
Why,
would send shockwaves.
why is it, Don, that ABC, NBC, and CBS, the Washington Post, New York Times, they all get the front row seats?
Yeah.
You know, so I hope Donald Trump follows, I don't know who he's going to name as press secretary, follows up by saying, you know, we're going to make this, we're going to open this up. How about giving Breitbart News a front row seat?
Yeah.
Or somebody from the Drudge Report, somebody from Accuracy in Media. I mean, and we should apply for a White House press pass. Let's open this thing up, and that'll send the media, the big liberal media, a message.
Yeah, well, John Gizzi is predicting that it'll be Sean Spicer. And, but I think you're right. You're exactly right. I mean, open this process up. Trump has cast this big, wide net. I have never really seen, you know, in terms of talking to all these people about all these positions. And, you know, in speaking about all this transition criticism, the interesting thing is that David Axelrod, of all people, defended him in his tweets by saying, hey, you know, we didn't do any of this in 2008, and nobody complained.
Well, they didn't complain about much that Obama did.
That's exactly right.
Of course, Axelrod won't say that.
All right, we've got just a little bit of time left. Is there anything else you want to say?
Well, just that this has been a great victory. I'm not talking in terms of politics. I'm not partisan. I covered this election fairly. I think some of my columns were the most critical of Trump in the beginning, especially about the Russian connection.
All right, absolutely.
And I think Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who's been named as National Security Advisor, has some questions to answer about his involvement with the Russian propaganda channel RT, or Russia Today.
Absolutely.
But I'm talking about a great victory in the sense that the American people won. They were able to break through the liberal media monopoly. And I'll tell you one other thing Trump ought to do. I know his economic advisor, Peter Navarro, has sent out a whole statement on this. Let's start breaking up the liberal media monopolies. You know, they're too strong, they're too powerful. The liberals used to say this all the time. Oh, they're too big. Now that they've captured them, oh, we're going to back away and we're going after Trump. Let's look at these big liberal media monopolies like Time Warner. like Jeff Bezos and Amazon and the Post and Carlos Slim and the New York Times and all their properties. Let's take a look and see whether they do indeed have a monopoly. Let's get the Congress to hold hearings on this.
All right. Well, that's it. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining me. And until next week, this has been the Bias Buzz.